League does not support candidates or parties. We do take positions on issues we have studied. Our programs will not necessarily represent these positions, but provide forums to increase understanding of public policy issues. Now, since Alyson is here, how about Susan, if you would introduce our speakers as they appear?
Absolutely. Yes, my name is Susan Ashmore. And again, on behalf of the League of Women Voters Juvenile Justice Study Group, I welcome Alyson Robbins, who's the Assistant Prosecuting Attorney for Washtenaw County, and hopefully the Chief Assistant Prosecuting Attorney of Washtenaw County, Victoria Burton-Harris. And we invite you to introduce yourself and to tell us about the juvenile programs and policies in Washtenaw County. And most of all, we thank you so much for being here. And with that, I yield the floor.
Good morning, everybody. I am Alyson Robbins. I'm sure Victoria will be here any second. And I joined the prosecutor's office a little over a year ago. And I handle 3 different diversion programs for the office. And one of them, and one that has a special place in my heart, is a juvenile justice related diversion program. Victoria, I want to break because I see you made it. Good morning. Do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Good morning, everyone. I apologize for my tardiness. I'm Victoria Burton-Harris, the Chief Assistant Prosecutor for Washtenaw County. I think that I have shared a virtual Zoom meeting room with most of you. I do know that the League of Women Voters has new leadership. Congratulations. I heard that last night at the NAACP meeting. So thank you for having us back again. Hi, Lynn. Hi, Harvey.
Lynn is our new president, and we welcome you, Lynn, for being in attendance with us this morning. And thank you so much, Victoria and Alyson. And back to you.
All right, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my work. I will tell you that my expertise, I would say, is on the programs related to juvenile justice that our office is involved in. I'm not as equipped to speak about sort of how all the broader programs. I can give you a little bit of an overview, but there are a lot of juvenile diversion opportunities that aren't managed by our office that are through the courts. And I could talk about those briefly, but don't want to pretend to know everything about them. Just a little bit about my background. I actually practiced as a legal aid attorney with Legal Services South Central Michigan for about 7 years. And so my practice was really not in criminal law, but during law school and in various other places, you know, criminal law and the ways in which people are getting entangled into the system because of behavioral health, substance abuse, mental health issues has always been something that has been important to me. And I was really excited to have the opportunity to come to the prosecutor's office and address those issues. With all of our diversion programs, that's really what the goal is that we're trying to build off-ramps that get people out of the criminal legal system, connect them with resources to potentially address what's going on with their lives, and reduce the likelihood that they get arrested or face criminal charges again in the future. That's really true for our adult programs and our juvenile programs. You know, the programs with kids, each one of the programs are a little bit different, have a slightly different focus, but at the end of the day, that's really what we're trying to do with all of them. So just really quickly on the adult programs, last May 2021, we launched a pre-plea diversion program in 15th District Court, so just Ann Arbor. Pretty unique program because it is diverting people before they even have to enter any kind of plea. And so we're starting the diversion sort of earlier in the process, so they aren't facing any of those collateral consequences of even having a plea. And that program, in the first year, we diverted 68 cases. The vast majority of those were dismissed at the end of the 6-month diversion period. And, you know, so the case is off the record. and they don't have any of those consequences for facing those charges. A lot of those cases, some huge percentage of them, and I could pull it up, were theft related. So, retail frauds, little embezzlements, taking things from a cash register at work, larcenies, were about 43% of those cases, just to give you an idea. And some of the other types of charges we divert in that one are malicious destruction of property, some simple assault and batteries, failure to report an accident, disorderly disturbing the peace. So those kind of misdemeanors. So that's the pre-plea diversion program. We started in 15th, but we're in the process and really hopeful that we're going to be spreading it to and expanding to the other courts in Washtenaw County. And yes, please ask questions, go for it.
Thank you. And I don't mean to interrupt you. Don't lose your thoughts there. During that 6-month period, are there interventions that are employed?
So the way that program works is that my office identifies a case as looking like it's one that we could put into the pre-plea diversion program. The first step after that, assuming the participant is interested in exploring what that might be, is that they meet with one of our phenomenal partners at the Ann Arbor Probation Department. And Joe Royal and Rebecca Elder meet with that individual and do a pretty lengthy interview with them to figure out what's going on, what led them to be in this position, and what is it that they're hoping to address in their life. And so these individuals don't have to take full responsibility for the crime as the police alleged that it was committed in the police report. They don't have to really address the specific incident at all, but they do need to be open to addressing something in their life that they feel like they want to improve on. And so it's a huge array, but a lot of times the diversion plan will include personal counseling or substance abuse assessment. Sometimes it's community service, but it's really tailored to the individual. For example, we had a woman in the diversion program who was really isolated for a bunch of personal reasons in her family. She really wasn't having a lot of social interaction. And so the community service that she was ordered to do, or in the diversion plan, was one that she had to leave her house. So she couldn't do something online. Like she was encouraged to find a community service placement with the help of probation, where she would get to interact and be around a community of people. So the diversion it can include random drug testing. We have someone on diversion right now who the actual crime didn't really have anything to do with substance abuse, but he's in the midst of treatment, and he was like, yes, I'd like to do the random drug testing because he felt like that would help him on his path.
The agreements are with the prosecutor's office. I work with DRC, that's why I'm asking.
Yes. So there's 2 agreements. One is with our office, and that explains what we're agreeing to do. If you complete this program, we're going to dismiss your case. We're not going to use anything that you share during community service against you in this case, things like that. And that they're agreeing to do their diversion plan. And then the diversion plan has the conditions that they have to complete in the 6 months.
Okay. Thank you, Allison.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so that's so we're hoping to expand that program. It's been really successful. It's not massive numbers, but it is a huge help to people who we've had a range of people. We've had some people who have pretty lengthy criminal histories, but really haven't gotten in trouble in about 10 years. And can this diversion program help them get back on track so that they don't get back into that revolving door of the criminal justice system? We also have some where they've never been in trouble before. We have a lot of 21-year-olds, 20-year-olds, and with this diversion program, can we end that cycle before it even starts? So a whole range of individuals really being helped by the program. I just want to talk about briefly is the law enforcement assisted diversion and deflection program, which we call LEAD. And that program is a partnership with the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Office, the Public Defender's Office, Community Mental Health, the local Ypsilanti Township prosecutors, McLean and Winters, and our office. And this one is really focused on individuals who have been in and out of the system over and over. And really, the root cause is clearly because they're struggling with a behavioral health issue. we're talking about someone who has been trespassed from all the party stores in Ypsilanti, keeps getting caught stealing like a fifth of vodka from the party store. Sorry, did I get cut off there? Siri keeps popping up as if she wants to be friends during our presentation. And so this program is more focused on people with longer criminal histories who have a lot of contacts with the jail. And it's really giving deputies another option when they get a call because someone is highly intoxicated and refusing to leave a block. And the police have arrested this guy over and over, and we have 10 years of experience that this is not working to help this guy. Now they can refer him to the LEAD program, which is a pretty intensive case management program. They get assigned a community mental health case manager, and it's a harm reduction based model. So we're coming in saying, what is it that you need right now, and how can we help you get that? So a lot of connecting with resources. It's not an abstinence-based program. And so, we'll have some people who are ready to address their substance abuse issues and some that aren't. But there's 2 case managers right now from community mental health that follow those individuals. And really, the ultimate goal with that program, and we're really rolling it out like right this moment, is pre-arrest. So the police aren't even arresting the individuals for that, disorderly on the block. Instead, they're getting referred to LEAD. They have 30 days to do sort of the initial LEAD assessment. And then that case never becomes a court case. So again, that's even earlier in the process before there's even a full police report on the matter, or certainly any criminal charges. So, Victoria and Ellie's dream is that the LEAD program means that we see fewer and fewer cases because we're connecting these individuals to services. They're going to help them get out of their situation where they are. Okay, but really we're here to talk about juvenile justice. So I want to talk about our juvenile diversion program. So we have a partnership with Washtenaw County's My Brother's Keeper. And does everyone have some familiarity with My Brother's Keeper? National program started by Obama. Our local chapter is just phenomenal. If you haven't had a chance to see the documentary of our My Brother's Keeper's Formula 734 program, so it's actually formula734.com. The documentary is phenomenal. And what it is a documentary of their program where they connect young men of color with mentors, and they create hip hop music. And the documentary follows their creation of this phenomenal album. And that was the first cohort of this 734 program. Through our partnership, what we're able to do is we're able to identify youth who are facing potential criminal charges and have them participate in the Formula 734 program instead of going through the court system and facing these charges. And so in the second cohort of Formula 734, we are able to send some justice-involved youth to be part of the program and have this community building experience where they're also getting job skills and mentorship and creating art. And some of the individuals are, musicians, but some of them bring other talents. It can be photography, it could be journalism skills, event planning, even like social media, and bringing kind of what they have to the table and coming together and creating. And so the second album has been put together for that second cohort. The individuals that we sent to it, the feedback we're getting is that it was a great program. One of them is really begging the head of the program at My Brother's Keeper to let him do it a second time because it was such a positive thing for him. And right now we are working on the third cohort, which hopefully will start, I would say, by September. And again, so we're looking for kids who we get a police report that alleges that a kid, stole a bicycle, fled from the police, maybe got in a fight with their brother. And we really do want to look for kids who are at risk of getting on the conveyor belt for the criminal legal system. And this program, the idea is, can we connect them to this program and help them, give them a space where they can sort of process how they got here and really be involved with something incredibly positive. We're really excited about the program. I will say, once they complete 734, we then officially deny the petition. So again, this is really at the beginning of the process. They haven't actually been charged. And we just dismiss it, don't authorize those charges against them. And in the first cohort where we sent justice involved youth, their cases were we didn't authorize any of those petitions. I know I read through some of the questions that were sent, so I just want to address a couple of them. One was, what happens if they don't do what they're supposed to do? I'm really hopeful with the juvenile program, especially because it's small and so sort of specific, that this may never happen, at least for a while. But if a kid sort of really disappeared and stopped attending, then what would happen, is that the charges would be authorized against them. And so that's sort of what they're choosing between. The program is 15 to 20 weeks and they meet once a week, either at Grove Studios or Neutral Zone. We've been able to work with My Brother's Keeper and with Vera, who's helped fund the program, to figure out transportation, because that was a barrier in the first round, so that we now have a way for, kids who were having trouble getting to the sessions. We have a way to handle that, which was a big barrier, and I'm glad that has happened. There's no cost to the kid or to the family for the program. In fact, Formula 734 pays the kids that participate a stipend, sort of going to the idea that you should be paid for your art. And so no cost to them. The kids don't need to take responsibility for the crime to participate. They don't have to admit guilt, I guess is a better way to say it. But they have to be willing to participate in this pretty intensive program. It ends up being a lot of time. And so far, there's been no issues with that. So I definitely want to take questions. I guess just really briefly, I'll just tell you that a couple things about the programs outside of our office. And then Victoria, I think I'm going to leave the juvenile restitution program to you, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So available through the court, and I'm honestly still learning about some of these programs, but even if the case gets to the court level outside of our office, there are a lot of programs for especially like first offender assault and battery cases. All misdemeanors a year or less get put on the consent docket. There's a domestic violence, so that's like, when someone gets in a fight with their brother, where they do circles at DRC, which Marianne, I'm sure, knows all about. And then some other behavioral health treatment court, the sex offender treatment docket. So there are quite a few options for diversion, and the number of lower juvenile cases that actually get to disposition, where there's, a conviction and that conviction stands, is actually not very huge in our county. So there are a lot of options, although I will be very candid to say that my hope still is, and there's work being done on this, is that, every kid in Washtenaw County that's facing potential charges gets to have an assessment, gets to be connected to resources to help figure out what got them there, and gets to do some kind of program like the MBK program. But I'd love to see there be a menu of options. I'd love to see there be a menu of options that we could offer them, like, someone who's interested in gardening, maybe they could do the youth program with Growing Hope in Ypsilanti, or is someone who I recently had a call with Safe House about their Teen Voice Speakers Bureau program. Is that a program that we could connect with? So I would love every kid to get to have this assessment, get connected to the resources that they need, that there be enough of those resources to serve them, and that if it makes sense, that they get to pick from a menu of these options to have this kind of experience, rather than going to court and potentially all the consequences that go with that. And at the end of the day, there's research, and I believe it deep in my heart, that if we can stop it before it's even started, like when someone, the first time someone gets arrested, sits in jail for a little, has a court case, is really huge, because just getting arrested and going to jail makes it more likely that it happens in the future. And I talked to my own teenagers about this, because, for them, if one of their friends got arrested, that would be so horrifying, because it's not part of their life. But as soon as you do it once, it becomes something maybe you feel like you deserve, or becomes a possibility. And I want all these kids that we're seeing to not even see this as a possibility, and know that this doesn't need to be their future, and to be given the tools to not have it be their future. So that's where we're going with that. Susan, please.
Yeah, just wondering what some of the diversion options are for girls.
So again, through the court, all those are open to them, but that's something Victoria and I are spending a lot of time talking about right now, is how can we replicate My Brother's Keeper for girls, for, people who are like, music's not really my thing. So right now, our only juvenile diversion program through our office is the My Brother's Keeper program, which we're sort of seeing as a pilot. And now, how can we replicate that to give more opportunities to girls and lots of other people with different interests and wherever they are in their life? Lynn.
I wondered how far out into the county your plans go. Are you starting, Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti, and then hope to build, connections with some of the outer communities?
Yeah, so when we started the MBK program, we were really focused on 48197 and 48198, where we felt like there was a huge need. What we've actually found is that we can sort of be more broader in looking at zip codes. And so we have expanded that. So we have, again, and Victoria, please correct me if I'm wrong, but our hope is eventually every kid, no matter what their zip code is, gets to do some kind of assessment and be presented with these kind of opportunities. So yes, is the answer. Nancy?
I was wondering how much funding is handicapping or bottlenecking this effort, and what kinds of things can be done to do in-kind services or partnering with what I want to say, nonprofits for these kinds of things.
Victoria, Victoria, do you want to address sort of the foundational funding and where we might go from here?
Yeah, so you all know that government is slow, and you can't just say, hey, Washtenaw County, here's a check that I want to give to the prosecutor's office for a diversion program. The county will say thanks, but we can't just like take that. So two things that we have thought about with this. Ellie and I started a nonprofit that we invited several systems players to sit on the board, as well as system impacted and involved folks. So we wanted this to be a community heavy board because folks will come up to Ellie and I and say, we love the work that you're doing. We want to financially support it. And so our nonprofit can take that money in. But we also know that we're institutionalized no matter where our hearts are. And if you want to give people power, institutional people who get money should turn around and give it to those people in the community, because that's how you transfer power. That's transformational justice. That's equity. And so having a community-led board of directors direct where we put those dollars in the community to say, hey, like the Juvenile Restitution program, that money is housed in that nonprofit organization. Dollars that we get moving forward that are coming in, we'll look to our community-led board to tell us where that money should go, because that organization is going to provide services to the young people or to people in general that we want to divert out of this system. Oftentimes we can identify organizations in the community, or really we have a lot of programs And programs are different from organizations. And the programs oftentimes are the ones providing the robust services with, by folks who have lived experience that can really connect to the folks that we want to put in their care, but they don't have the financial resources to say hire 2 or 3 more people to be able to give the services the way that we ask them to. And so being able to say, oh, we got you. We got, $20,000 or $30,000 that we can use to sow a seed into your program or your organization through our nonprofit. If you can help fund the rest, that can be a game changer. Another option is to just identify organizations like the DRC, who is, its own organization. They have their own budget. They are able to get in dollars from funders, and they are able to immediately put those dollars into the community by training facilitators and being intentional about the facilitators they train, facilitators of color, facilitators that are men of color, understanding that if you really want to connect with the folks that are system involved, you got to look at their profile and say, how can I really connect with them? You connect with them when you look like them, when you understand them, when you've walked in their shoes and you have the same lived experience. The DRC being able to understand that under the leadership of Belinda Doolin, that means that they can be intentional about how they spend their dollars. So between organizations that our nonprofit looks to help fund and organizations that are already up and running and are able to secure their own funding, partnering in that way and really collaborating and de-siloing the work, that's how we're able to attack this without kind of going around and asking the county for more money in our budget.
Thank you.
I will say the only thing I will add is, on my sort of dream list is for funding is, I'd love to be able to have social workers who can do those assessments. I'd love to have, I hear from the probation officers and others about sort of lack of services for teens dealing with substance abuse issues. We all know teens sort of dealing with mental health right now. And I'd love to be able to provide some funding to the nonprofits we're partnering with, Growing Hope and Ypsilanti as an example, to sort of put them in a better position to be able to host justice involved youth as well. So those are kind of all on our funding and something that our grants people are sort of thinking about and focused on. Susan, is that a question from you?
Yes, I was just curious, what cases would be handled by the Washtenaw County Juvenile Court versus the prosecutor's office, Juvenile Court Division? What cases would go where?
So any case that we authorize goes to the juvenile court. And so the ones that we're taking out to do My Brother's Keeper never make it to the court. And so the ones that are not, the petitions aren't being authorized. And, there's a million reasons for that. Like often our office isn't going to authorize sort of a first offense. Let's say we get a police report where a daughter has thrown something at her dad. The parents don't know what to do, feels kind of out of control. Police come, technically an assault and battery. We get that police report, have some contact with the parents who, show what kind of treatment that the kid is in mental health. We might not even authorize that case, no charges for that one. And then that would never go to the court. A lot of the ones that are in the court, is frankly everything else. And so there is some overlap because there might be, like I talked about, a family fight that ends up in the My Brother's Keeper program, but it's a very small program right now. And so the juvenile program through DRC, the circles, all those cases. So I'm trying to figure out if there's a clearer way. It's not really by type of crime, except for we have to focus on sort of misdemeanors as opposed to, an armed robbery is probably if, a kid is really sort of involved in that higher level, it's probably not one that we're going to put in the My Brother's Keeper program at this point. But there's not, for better or worse, there's not sort of strict rules about what has to go in what diversion program. There's more so from the court's perspective. And it might be interesting for you all to hear from the person at the court that works heavily on this, who I believe is, I just had her name at the tip of my, and I can't come up with it. Oh, Jessica Ashmore. And who, that might be interesting. And actually, if you have her come speak to you, I would love to be invited to hear, because I'm still learning as I go. But it would be to hear sort of how the court is funneling different cases into different things.
So it's not the prosecutor's office that determines whether it goes to the juvenile, the Washtenaw County Juvenile Court, or stays in the prosecutor's juvenile court division. Who determines that? Is that that's coming from your office?
So go ahead, Victoria. Yeah, articulate it better than me, please.
All cases come through our office. No cases originated through the court. So a petition, if a young person ends up in the juvenile system, it's because they came through the Washtenaw County Prosecutor's office through the juvenile division.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just wasn't sure who went where. Thank you.
Yeah, they all come through here first. And then once we pass them over to the court essentially, they do what they think is best. And all of the lawyers kind of really turn into advocates for this young person, no matter where they sit. And that's not always true for prosecutors' offices. That's true for this office. And I can't take credit for that, and neither can Ellie or Allison. It's that credit belongs to the woman who runs our juvenile division. Her name is Karen. And Karen and the unit that she runs, when you listen to them speak, they don't sound like folks who, as you would think, are prosecuting young people and, are traditional carceral punitive prosecutors who want to just punish young people. No, Karen and her team, they work very closely with the courts, probation. They work closely with the public defender's office, who 9 times out of 10 is the one assigned to represent the young person unless they have their own private counsel. And they really kind of form a team around a child and working with all of the partners, say what's best for this young person. And it's a beautiful thing when you see it at work. And I don't know if you ever would because of privacy, issues with young people, but Karen Fields is an angel that walks among us. If I keep talking about her, I'm gonna cry because she's set to retire from our office very soon. But she is a woman who throws down for our kids. She really is.
Thank you.
All right, I see a question in this in the chat. So it's Victoria and Ellie Savitt that started the nonprofit. I can't take credit, but I love the idea that Ellie and Allie get mixed up sometimes. But Victoria, can you talk about the nonprofit a little bit more, what the name and how people could learn more about it?
Sure, it is the Washtenaw Justice Project. Our board is comprised of community organizers, community activists, school board members, the executive director of the Student Advocacy Center. Our chief public defender is on our board. Director of community engagement, Derek Jackson, is on our board. We have tried to be intentional, as I stated earlier, about who sits on that board, because we need everyone to understand where the power really belongs and who really needs to control the money and have the power to do that. We have fiscal sponsorship under new. And our executive director is Ruby Schneider, who is our grants developer and just all things magic in the prosecutor's office. This place would burn down without her. And our mission is to be able to take philanthropic dollars and turn it right over to community organizations and programs who need it, who are not so easily funded, but provide amazing services that we need to stay connected to in order to send folks to them, so that they get what they really need, because we know that they're not going to get it in the system. Another reason why systems, actors, we don't really need to be saying, oh, money should go here. That needs to be guided from folks who are in the community, who have been impacted either as victims, defendants, or family members of either one, who can say this organization is doing the work that's needed and we need to help fund it so that we can push more people to them.
Okay, Susan asked a great question in the chat about sort of me making a distinction between misdemeanor and felonies, and how are those distinctions applied to juveniles, and what about status offenses, like not going to school, and how are these handled? And Victoria, if you want, what I want to pull up is I loved when we had that presentation where we got all the numbers of the different these types of cases, and I want to pull it up because there's some interesting stats in there about our office really doesn't see those status offenses. So much is handled by the school, and the good news is that a lot of it isn't being turned over for potential criminal charges. But if you have more to add on that, Victoria, while I pull up those stats, please hop in.
Yeah, let me. So they're handled by just not us charging them. I'll tell you a story. Ellie had a friend that is a principal, and this principal friend of his wanted Ellie to go back on his policy to treat kids like kids and not charge for status offenses. And this, was a little bit of a different situation. He wanted Ellie to charge this child for marijuana. He goes, well, if you're not charging them for marijuana, how are we going to get them to stop smoking marijuana? And he goes, well, how would you normally handle something if it weren't marijuana? Wouldn't you normally say you can't do something on school grounds, or we're going to, maybe put you in after school detention, or have you do some community service around the school? And like, you could see the principal's eyes opening up like, oh yeah, we got the same authority that you have as a prosecutor's office, minus being able to send them to a criminal system that's going to forever impact them for the rest of their lives. And Ellie was like, yeah, man, like, you have authority. Don't think you don't have authority. And you're the best one to use that authority, not a prosecutor's office. We're not like your personal henchmen. No, that's harmful to your kids. And it invites a whole host of other problems. So I think that us coming in, it was radically different for us to come in and say, we're going to treat kids like kids, and we're going to explain to you what that means. We're not going to charge kids for assault because they get in a schoolyard fight or a fight in the bathroom. We're not going to charge kids for truancy. We're not going to charge kids for smoking cigarettes or smoking marijuana. We're not going to do that, because the moment we do it, we have just gone beyond just responding to what they did and holding them accountable and punishing them in a childlike way. We're punishing them in an adult way, because we brought them into this system unnecessarily. And like Alyson said, that first contact most often will dictate your future.
Okay, so just because I was so interested in this, and so you may be as well. So when Judge Outside spoke to a meeting I was on, she went through really interesting stats about cases the juvenile court's seeing, and I'm sure she'd be happy to share it with this group. But the one thing that was really interesting is back in like 2007, there were about 1,200 delinquency cases, and about more than 100 of those were truancy, and there was no truancy cases at all in 2021 that were presented to the juvenile court. And just in terms of those delinquency numbers, so in 2004, the court handled 1,180 cases, and in 2021, they handled 246. So, I mean, there's been some progress. And the court, my understanding is, stop giving truancies a case number. And so we're seeing interesting trends, but part of the reason for that meeting is sort of looking at, but she did go through, of the first 4 months of 2021, the 73 cases. I'm looking at sort of 26% were in some kind of diversion program, which doesn't include ours that the court doesn't ever see. 32% were on probation, and a lot of these would be dismissed after successful probation. 10% got fees only, usually because they're on probation for another case. 21% were dismissed. So just some interesting numbers from the court. But in terms of fees, first of all, tell us when you need us to stop talking, but I definitely want to have a chance to talk about the juvenile restitution program. And I'm happy to tell what I know, Victoria, or you know more about that one for sure. So you want to jump in on that?
Sure. So the juvenile restitution program was a idea that came from one of our juvenile APAs who had been doing that work for a couple of years. And he said, it breaks my heart that I see so many young people go on probation, do everything that they're supposed to do, but they are still tethered to the system at the end of their probation term because they don't have the money to do the one thing that's left to do, and that's pay the restitution to the crime victim to make them whole. And when that money goes unpaid, one, obviously the crime victim does not get it. The court doesn't step in and say, oh, we'll pay it for you. But, really more importantly, the young person is forever tethered to the system. That means that they're still on probation. They have to get permission if they want to go out of town. If someone dies and they need to travel, they need to get permission. All the restrictions that are in place when you're on probation, they stay in place as long as the case is open because you can't pay that restitution to close it. And so just imagine walking around in a very fragile, vulnerable state as a young person, making sure that you mind your P's and Q's and don't do this and don't do that because it might be a violation of your probation. And you're really kind of walking around with like a mobile cage around you, a jail, like you just can't do a whole lot. And it is, I was in California last week with a young person on a government site visit, and he had been incarcerated in our county jail before, and he was offering the San Francisco County officials a glimpse of what that's like as a young person. And he said, I thought I had done everything just to get out and be told, nope, you can't do this, you're still on probation, nope, you can't do that. And he said, it made me just say, why am I trying? I wanted to just give up. And that's what happens when you keep kids tethered to the system because they're too poor to pay restitution to crime victims. And so our APA, he said it would be wonderful if we had some money to just pay it. So our wheels started turning. Ellie and I soon thereafter went up to Mackinac for the policy conference last fall. Had chats with some folks who have this walking around money. And they were, one guy, he said, I can give you $15,000 or up to $15,000 without getting approval from my board. And we were like, great. And then we came back home and Lynn Song, I was telling her about it. And for those of you who don't know, Ellie and I are very close. And we always have like a fun competition thing going. And so Ellie was really the one who secured the first $15,000 on Mackinac Island because I was back at the room taking a nap. And he said, Vic, while you were napping, I was making us money. And I was like, oh, okay. And so he says, you got to step it up. And I was like, okay. Say no more, my brother. So I came back and I told Lynn, and Lynn goes, I'm going to help you. So you can tell Ellie he can't talk smack. And I was like, oh, good. So I said, Ellie, Lynn Song is giving me the $15,000 to match your $15,000. So we now have $30,000 to help pay these kids restitution to sever them from the system. And that is how it started. The $30,000 is sitting in the nonprofit, the Washtenaw Justice Project. Any young person, no matter where they live, no matter their ability to pay. So we do not means test, because again, that's not equity. As long as a child, a young person who was on probation is just doing whatever the probation department has recommended and the judge has ordered, because we do not say you got to do extra stuff to get this money. Nope. All you got to do is just do whatever you were normally required to do by the court. We will pay your restitution up to $1,000, which, by the way, when we pulled our records over the last couple of years, that would take care of over 70% of the young people who are in our system who would otherwise not be, because of this restitution debt that hangs over their heads. So we identify those young people in our office. We invite defense attorneys to identify them as well in the event that we might miss someone. We invite parents and community organizations who work with young people to identify those folks and say, hey, I don't know if you know, but this young person has restitution, to a crime victim stemming from a case in your office. Think that they may be a good fit because they're on probation and have restitution for you to pay. We'll say, no problem. You don't have to have a certain type of offense. You don't have to have a certain profile, because this program is really for us to do as much as we can and be as inclusive as we can in trying to help these kids get out of this system, because it says to them, when you've done everything right, we got you. We will help you. There's no need for you to feel downtrodden and want to give up because you feel like the deck is stacked against you. We are a part of that deck and we're unstacking it. That's the restitution program.
What else can we tell you?
Well, actually, I've got a quick question. I'm just curious, what training in adolescent development the folks in your department who are dealing with the youth get in terms of their inability to self-regulate and peer pressure and all that. Is there specific training for the employees who deal with the youth in your department on adolescent development?
Yeah.
So I just
go ahead, Alyson.
Could I just jump in really quickly because it's been a while since you interviewed me, Victoria? But so I will just throw out there that I actually have a master's of education in early adolescent education because I started as a teacher teaching 7th and 8th grade middle school. And so, a lot of this is very sort of in my wheelhouse. And I've done a lot, I have done a lot, some work with the Miller resentencing hearings about adolescent brain science and all of that. However, that being said, and then I will let my boss speak because that's what you should do. But that being said, I am very aware that I am not an expert on that, which is why I feel really strongly about having actual experts and social workers who aren't even part of our office being involved in the assessments in the future, so that me as a lawyer and actually from the prosecutor's office, not sort of being evaluating that ourselves, because we know what our expertise is. And I always love to let real experts be the expert in terms of that information.
Thank you.
So just to add on very quickly, I echo everything that Alyson said, and it may have been a long time since I've interviewed you, Alyson, but I remember because I hired you for all of that stuff. Our office, the county gives each one of our APAs in our office money every year to go and do training at conferences. And we encourage all of our staff to actually use that money. If it's not used, it goes right back to the general fund, and it can't be used really for anything else. And they do take advantage of it. I have never not approved a request to go on a conference, and they do go, and they go as a unit, as many of them as they can take without taking the entire unit and we don't have an operating unit while they're gone. And these are folks who have been doing this work for a number of years. And that experience in and of itself, working with young people and others in the system, it's taught them a lot, and they don't believe that they should solely rely on that. So they're always looking to deepen their understanding and their knowledge base. I will also say that we do not just put people in the juvenile division. I handle the organization of our office and who works in what department. And that's the one department that I'm not putting you in unless I know you want to be there for obvious reasons. Previously, I understand that that unit was kind of seen as a punishment. And so you were told you're going there because you screwed up. We have the opposite outlook. You don't need to go and work with kids if, you know, we think that you screwed up somewhere else. No. That's a prized position. If you want to be in that unit, and I need to see that you want to be in that unit and you understand what your role is, that you're really an advocate in addition to the rest of the folks that work in this system with our children. And all of the folks who are currently working in that division, they signed up to be there. They raised their hand and they asked to be moved from other divisions to the juvenile division.
Thank you.
I had a question too about restitution. We did a court watching program through FORJ, and that's been 16 through 6 months, around 2016, 17. And there were a number of kids who had done silly things that, like tearing up a bathroom in one of the high schools, or excuse me, middle schools, which was well over $1,000. And another kid that took somebody's car and then smashed the thing. And so I forget what the restitution there, but it was pretty remarkable. So is there any, I mean, your $1,000 limit kind of puts those guys out of the box. Is there any other ways? I mean, kids, you're talking, you know, several $1,000s. It gets to be cost prohibitive for some of these kiddos. Is there other options for them?
Not through our office. We looked at, so our thing is, how can we help even if it's not perfect? We don't believe in letting perfect be the enemy of good. So if we can help over 70%, that's better than nothing. Does that leave room for us to figure out what can be done with the remaining close to 30% of young people who are going to have restitution that, you know, it's several thousands of dollars? Yeah, it does. And we will continue to put one foot in front of the other and work on that. But we came up with $1,000 number. And we do leave a little bit of room for our board to vote and decide if they want to take it up, you know, a couple $100. If it's like $1,500, we're not going to be like, hey, we're going to only pay $1,000, but you're still tethered to the system for $500. No. And the discretion lies with the board. You know, if it's some extenuating circumstance and the board says, I'm going to go and find the money from a private donor to help pay this $2,000 restitution, will you all, as my board members, support that and vote that we make that exception? They're free to do that. And that's exactly why, again, we wanted it to be a community-led board and not something that prosecutors were running. Nope. So we'll continue to explore. And if you are able to find some walking around money to add to this fund, feel free to let me know.
Oh, there's another question in the chat. What do you see as the top needs for further strengthening justice for our youth?
I will say, I'll give a little small tidbit and let Alyson take it away. My goal for 2022, after we were in office for that first year and really just kind of like learning a whole lot, learning the lay of the land, learning the job, and we're still learning. We learn every day. But when Ellie and I talked over the holidays, I said, you know, my goal for 2022 is to really focus on the kids in our system. Being here for a year, I saw the most devastation in our young people, and we continue to see it play out as a community with the youth violence and youth gun violence. And I've spent a lot of time with our educators and with young people who have been involved in the system and incarcerated in our county jail, just really trying to learn. And what I have found is that even high school or even middle schoolers, but certainly high schoolers, they all will say to me, ma'am, if I had been given an opportunity to learn something, be exposed to something, have an experience with the program or an organization or a mentor or a person, have access to certain resources when I was in elementary school, I would not have had the anger issues that I had and the frustration that I had and the communication issues that I had in middle school that just kind of really festered as I got older and played out in my behavior in high school, and caused me to lose motivation, caused me to cease dreaming. Because when you talk to these kids, they're brilliant and they're honest with you. They tell you what home life is like. They tell you that, teachers will come, resource officers will come knock on the door to their parents' home, and mom will say, oh, I know my child hasn't been in school because they need to work. And that's a real situation for so many of our young people, especially on the east side of the county, where we have a drop off in resources that's been very intentional when you look at the opportunity index. And to know that you got a whole family of folks running a local Taco Bell in Ypsilanti, from a mom to teenage kids to nieces and nephews. And I mean, like, you got high schoolers who are managing fast food restaurants. How are you going to tell them, oh, leave that money behind and go back to school every day? They're like, please, you don't know the life I live. So when you talk to these kids and you break things down and you start to peel back the layers of why they've lived a certain life and made decisions the way they have, it all comes down to what was poured into them or really not poured into them when they were in elementary school. We think that, oh, if we get to them in high school and have all of these robust programs and mentoring services and this, that, and the third, then we can save them. We got to go back so much earlier to elementary school. And that's coming from their own mouth.
I think you summed it up pretty well. I'll just add that. So I represented a man who had been in prison for 27 years for something he did when he was 15. And anytime I talk about juvenile justice, he's at the front of my mind because he was a 15-year-old kid living in poverty. And his parents had actually reached out for help very soon before he committed the crime that landed him in jail for 27 years. He had started drinking with some friends. He'd been doing like shoplifting from the local mall, and his parents had reached out to the court to say, like, we need help. Our son's drinking, what can we do? And they said, well, he hasn't been charged with a crime, so there's nothing we can help you with. And there weren't resources for these parents. And, so what happened is it snowballed, and my client, with his very adolescent brain, made some decision to steal a car with a friend of his, and it snowballed into ending up with someone dead and my client in prison for 27 years. And when I think of his story and all the points along the way, starting back in elementary school, when I looked at them, his report cards note how bright he is, but and the buts are very long. He's not getting to school on time. He comes to school tired. He's not doing his work, all that kind of stuff. I think of all the points along the line that some intervention could have made a big difference, and that we failed him on, and we failed the woman that lost her life as well, obviously. And that's where I just think, how do we reach all of those intervention points and keep doing it, right? Like, we can start, I totally agree, we need to start in elementary school and then continue. Because this person, who now luckily was released from prison and is living a fantastic life, is married, has a job, the entire 27 years when he finally got out in prison, he didn't have one single ticket for any fighting or anything violent, which shows you that this is not a person that was a monster in any way. And, we lost 27 years of him being a productive member of society because he didn't have those interventions. And so that's where I sort of come to this, and how do we intervene earlier to not get to this point? Victoria, can you check out the question in the chat about the restitution fund?
The prosecutor's office could not, because remember the distinction, we're a government department, but the nonprofit where the money is housed could. And that's something that I will take to our board at our next quarterly board meeting. Thank you, Harvey. I will say that as of right now, we're not close to blowing through our $30,000.
That's great. Great, great, great. Well, we see that it's 10 o'clock, and I wish to really give a heartfelt big thank you to all of you. Victoria, thank you so much. Alyson, thank you so much. This has been just fantastic. Susan, thank you for the questions in advance.
Thank you. And let me just please, not to interrupt you, but
Sure.
before you go, Ms. Burton-Harris and Ms. Robbins, please extend our deep gratitude to Ruby Schneider for facilitating your even being here today. And I told her yesterday that the metaphorical fruit basket goes to her. So thank you. Please express our gratitude.
We absolutely will. Thank you, Susan.
For sure. So this has been an informative and just fantastic hour. I've learned so much. I especially loved all the stories of cases and how you illustrated your points with very heartfelt stories. So please know that we have to let you get back to your work day. We realize this is the beginning of your day, and we appreciate so much all of the great information. I have learned so much. We have taped this for those who may want to view parts of it again. Okay, well, we will hope to connect with you later in other ways, but we will support you any way we can. And we appreciate so much the contributions you've made this morning. Great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.